Dudes? It's your boy Agent Psycho, aka Sniper98. Barely a month after I made a video for one Chinese mobile game, here I am making another, though to be fair, I figured I'd be making videos for these two anyway. So in light of content haha, just kidding, DMO will never let that shit get localized. Azur Lane being at Anime Expo this year, and in light of Anniversary coming up in about a month or so, depending on when this video comes out, I'll be doing what I did for FGO and make a video for Boats in celebration of its first anniversary. What do you mean a year isn't 43 days? Obscure memes aside, in this video I'll be walking you through the UI of the game, explain the basic mechanics, and only the basics because as a self-proclaimed filthy casual, I don't think I'm qualified to speak on much more than that, and share some advice and materials that I feel will help newer players get their accounts stabilized faster and more easily. I had initially planned to get this video out before Anime Expo 2, but Yostar just had to drop the French event on us the fucking week before when I was already crunched for time getting this and a few other videos out in the meantime. Hey, that's a nice editing schedule we got there, shame if something were to fucking happen to it. So with the introductions and disclaimers out of the way, let's dive in and check out your new favorite Warship Waifu Collection simulator, Azur Lane. As always, let's start out at the login screen, and apologies for the footage in advance. I'm recording from my tablet, and tablet resolutions don't quite fit your standard YouTube video resolutions. That's how you know this video is going to be scuffed as fuck. But anyways, this is your login screen where the art frequently rotates every so often, usually with each major update. If you like weeb games that spam artwork at you, especially lewd ones, you've come to the right place. When you first start, you can just tap on the screen to log in and select the server that you want to make your account on with the server change button. If you already have an account tied to a social media platform, you can tap one of the three buttons on the left and load in your account that way. But you probably don't have an account, seeing that you're watching this video, so let's start from the beginning. Once you load in, the game will start you off on a quick tutorial that teaches you the basics of CQC, the gameplay, sorry. Azur Lane is a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up game where you control a fleet of up to 6 boats to fight against enemies that are always on the right side of your screen, much like your traditional shmups. Once you're done with the tutorial, you should find yourself on the main menu, and that's where we'll really begin, starting from the top right. Here are your oil, coin, and gem counters. Oil and coin are your two primary resources. You use oil to deploy your fleets and fight with them, and you use coin for almost everything else. Gems are, as you might have guessed, your whale currency or your premium currency for you normies who might be watching for some morbidly curious reason. Moving down, you've got your news banner that shows you what limited banners, events, and sales are going on at the moment, along with an event summary tab that you can access to see all the events going on at a glance, which also includes your monthly login calendar that shows you what daily login rewards you'll get for the month, including a free rare boat. You can also just scroll across the banners if you don't want to sit around and just wait for them to scroll by automatically. The buttons on the left of the news banners are your main event buttons. If there are any events going on, or previous events that have recently ended, the buttons leading to them can usually be found here. Next, you've got your formation button, which allows you to set up to 4 fleets of boats, along with 2 submarine squadrons. You have to set up your fleets manually here before you go into any normal battles, so expect to be by here pretty often. The battle button takes you to another menu where you can browse through story chapters to play, but since it's a whole nother menu, let's leave this for later. Below the battle button is your world chat. Azur Lane supports its own chat rooms that you can lurk in to talk to your fellow boat degens, though it'll mostly be about how good or bad your luck is with the gacha, how much you like being stepped on by Lali Akagi, or Watashi wa number 1 if you're in room 4. Or you can just spam emotes too, that's cool. To the far right, you've got a column of buttons starting from the top with Memento. It'll take you to the Bans tab by default, where you can see what specific boats you'll need to get and limit break to obtain certain rewards. I should probably get around to getting that beaver badge at some point myself too. Oh, and up top, you can see how many boats you've unlocked out of all the boats in the game, along with your collection ratio if you prefer a percentage. There's also 2 buttons that both take you back out to the main menu for some reason, one on the top left and one on the top right. The first tab on the left is Archives. This is where you can go see how many girls out of all of them you have or owned at some point. It's split into 3 tabs: Common, Collabs, and Priority. Common boats are the ones you can just get directly from the game, either through gacha, the bans tab that we were on just earlier, or farming. Collabs are, obviously, collaboration boats, and so far as of this video, we've had the Nep Nep and Kizna Ai collabs. The priority boats are a bit different. They're like common boats where you can get them straight from the game, but they have their own dedicated tab where you can get them, and they take a lot of work to obtain and a ton of a very specific material to max out. We'll talk about them in more detail once we get to their own tab. The retrofit tab is where you can view all the boats you retrofitted, but unlike the normal archives tab, you can't see which boats you still need to retrofit, though you can always just go to your dock and check manually which ones have retrofits that still need to be done. And the memories tab is where you can go view the game's stories, dialogue, and special secretary missions if you haven't done those yet. You can filter the stories by main, event, and secretary missions with the buttons up top, and you can tap on the story to view their individual parts too. The next button is ladder. This is where you look at rankings if you're into that. Fleet power is, I assume, the overall strength of your account as a whole in terms of how well your boats are geared out and leveled. Collection is how many boats you have out of everyone you could have gotten, pretty straightforward, and exercise is your PvP ranking. Note that these rankings only count for the individual servers themselves, as in the number 1 guy in exercise, for example, is only number 1 for the server that they're currently in. Next is friends, which are useless both IRL and in-game. You can have up to 50 friends in your friend list, and you can stalk them to see what they're doing, chat with them, check out their dorms, or delete them if you don't like their dorms. Basically, your friends, if you have any, are only for seeing what their dorms are like and giving them shit about how bad they look. You can add friends, of course, either manually by entering their usernames or user ID numbers, or by spamming friend requests to random people that the game digs up for you. Reminds me a lot of another game, huh? Requests is where you manage friend requests, if you have any, so for most of you, there's no reason to come here. And next is your blacklist, in case you really want to avoid some random degen on the internet. Your mail tab is where the game stores your mail, which can be stuff like merit rewards from your PvP fights, resources from the trade license or from the game itself, and messages and apologems from the devs whenever they're kind enough to drop us some. You can mark individual mails as important as a way to filter them so that when you hit the important tab, those mails are the only ones you see. You can keep up to 1,000 mail entries, and as far as I can tell, there doesn't seem to be an expiration date for them, so you can just let them stack up and sit in your inbox forever like they're Twinkies. You can also delete mail that you've already viewed so that they don't clutter up your inbox, and collect all your mail to get everything in your inbox at once. The Notice tab is the window that pops up once you've logged in and come to the main menu. It tells you the patch notes for the last game update and whatever other announcements that are going on at the moment. If you hit the notified checkbox up at the top right, you won't have to see the notice board again when you exit the game and log back in during the rest of the day. Now onto the settings. Here you can bind your account, which is obviously pretty important, with Twitter, Facebook, or with Yostar's own backup method. Binding your account is very easy and also very necessary, as we've already had like 1 or 2 major game updates where you needed to have your game bound, otherwise you couldn't play the game with your old account afterwards since it'd be stuck on the old game client and not the new one. Options is where you can adjust various game settings, the most important of which is your frames. As of the official release on May 20th of this year, Boats now has the glorious 60 FPS option available, but you should only reserve the 60 FPS option for emulators or for tablets, since they can handle the game running at 60. Phones can too, it's just that 60 FPS burns through your battery just like how events burn through your oil, so maybe don't play Boats on 60 on your phone. Beneath the FPS option is your notifications. Whenever the game finishes a commission or class, or whenever you're about to cap out on oil and or coin from your canteen and merchant, your device will let you know by making a vibration noise or a jingle, or in my case, both. And beneath notifications are 2 more settings, one with custom ship names and the other with auto combat alerts. Custom ship names means the nicknames people like to give their married boats, which you can only do for married boats. So if you find these nicknames annoying because people just spam shitty memes all day with them, you can always disable them so the boat's actual names can be shown at all times. The control tab is where you can adjust button placements for your gameplay screen to your liking. This is only useful when you use manual gameplay, but at some point you'll have to do some manualing, so might as well make your experience as comfortable as possible. The audio tab is where you can adjust your your audio settings, obviously, and where you can restore default settings and repair audio files in case your device has damaged ones for some reason. This is also where you can update your voice files and live 2D animations. The logout button is for you to manually log out in case you want to swap accounts or switch servers, or if you want to make your late night commissions actually show up when they should. And finally, the help tab will pull up a separate window kind of like this, and it covers customer service and the more legal parts of the game, so in case you lose your account and want to cry about how much you spent on it, here's probably where you go, other than Twitter, of course. Now moving on to the bottom row of buttons on the main menu, starting from the right. The guild button takes you to your guild page if you're part of one, and check out what's going on in your guild. The guild that I'm a part of is full of memers, ship posters, emote spammers, and people who haven't logged in for half a fucking year, so I have no idea what goes on in there half the time. You can check out all the members of your guild at once if you're bored as hell and have nothing better to do, and you also get your own guild chat to kill time with in case world chat is getting a little bit too degenerate. Next is the saltiest button in the game, the build button. Here's your gacha, where you dive in and wail for the latest and greatest boat waifus that the game has to offer. There are 3 gachas that are always available, light, heavy, and special. And if there's an event gacha, there will be a 4th event limited tab where you can roll for event boats. Each of them has its own pool of boats that you can pull from and shows you the pull chances of each boat rarity, but it only shows you the individual rate up chances of the boats that are currently on rate up if there are any. They also don't exactly tell you which boats you can pull from each gacha either, which I think they should do, since if you've got the collector EX trait and you're missing a boat, you'd have to go all the way back to the memento tab and tap on the boats that you're missing to see exactly where you can roll for them, if you can at all. Also, for some reason your secretary boat, whoever you've assigned to it, shows up on the right in the gacha screen. So remember, your waifu is watching you roll for other waifus and silently judging you for it. To roll gacha, you need 2 resources, wisdom cubes and coin. All gachas except for LightCon require 2 cubes and 1500 coin per roll, so each 10 roll costs you 20 cubes and 15,000 coin. LightCon, on the other hand, is only 1 cube and only 600 coin per roll. Once you confirm a build order or a batch of build orders, you have to wait for the construction timers to finish depending on what you rolled, and you can view your orders in the Orders tab. This is where another resource comes in, Quick Finishers. As their name suggests, they instantly complete a build order so that you don't have to wait around for them to finish, and it only takes 1 finisher per order no matter what the boat type. The third tab here is the Exchange, where you use yet another resource, Medals of Honor. No, not the game. You receive medals primarily by retiring boats that have rare or higher rarities. Basically, any blue, purple, or gold boats give you medals when you retire them, which you can do in the last tab beneath this one. Rare boats, or the blue ones, give you 1 medal each, elites or purples give you 4, and super rares or golds give you 10. You can use these medals to buy boats and items directly here in Exchange. The ships tab itself usually doesn't have much, but in case you're looking for a purple boat, you might find them here depending on which ones you're looking for. But mainly what you should be saving medals for are either the gold bullets that show up in Exchange every so often, or the featured gold boat on Exchange, both of which can be exchanged for 80 medals, which is a lot. There's also an items tab where you can spend medals for resources instead, like plates, blueprints, textbooks, dorm food, and as of the sub update, sub equipment boxes. If you find yourself with a surplus of materials, it's not a bad idea to come here to the items tab to see what they have in store in case you're low on materials. Each tab, including the SSR exchange, is on rotation. The items tab refreshes every day, the ships tab refreshes every 3 days I think, and the SSR exchange rotates every 2 weeks or so. Of note, the SSR exchange only features gold boats who are already part of permanent gachas, so this means that you can't just pick up event limited gold boats here in case that's what you were hoping for. The gold bullion that you can get here through exchange also shows up only every once in a while, though you'll have to look up its exact rotation period on your own. Lastly, the retire button. Like I mentioned earlier, this is where you retire boats you don't want or need. Primarily, they'll be non-common boats, since common boats don't give you medals if you retire them, so it's better if you use them as enhancement fodder instead. When you retire a boat, you also get a bit of coin and oil along with the medals you get, and the game also gives you the option to scrap the gear that they came with, which you should pretty much do all the time since boats only ever come with like blue rarity gear at best, so you get some plates and coin out of that too. The next tab is your missions tab. This This is where you come to redeem your dailies, weeklies, and side quests if you have any active. The dailies give you lots of rewards if you stay on top of them and do them every week, and recently they even got a slight overhaul so that they give you a bit more stuff now, like free dorm food. The tabs here categorize your quests into main, side, daily, weekly, and event. Your main quest line is your story progression. Your side quests are your hard mode quests and secretary missions. Your dailies are, well, your dailies. You should know what those are, right? Same with the weeklies. And event missions are ones that only show up during events to incentivize you to play those events. Alright, remember the priority boats from before? We're going to talk about them again in more detail here in the lab tab. In the lab menu, you have 3 more tabs: Fleet Tech, Research Academy, and Shipyard. Let's start with Fleet Tech, which has a lot going on, but not really, about half of which I myself don't even understand completely thanks to my status as a filthy casual. Basically, from what I understand, Fleet Tech is a way for you to give boats of a certain faction a few extra combat stats by having enough tech level to upgrade the faction. The more boats you have, and the more leveled and limit broken they are, the more tech points they'll give towards their specific faction, enabling you to upgrade their faction, which costs coin, but gives all boats in that faction some extra stats. You can upgrade factions in the faction tab up at the top right. Take a shot every time I say the word faction. The main screen is where you can view each individual boat and see how many tech points they're contributing to your fleet tech and the extra stats that they're getting from their faction level. Though I'm pretty sure these extra stats only affect your boats in PvE and not PvP, but feel free to correct me on that. The next tab in your lab is your Research Academy. This is like commissions but more geared for your PR boats, because outside of events that have PR blueprints on sale, this is the only place where you can get blueprints for your PR boats. You have 5 projects to choose from initially, and they come in a variety of sizes, rewards, and costs. The most valuable things that they give you are the PR blueprints and blueprints for PR exclusive and other gold gear pieces, some of which are among the best in the game. Because of this, there's even a tier list for these researches in terms of which ones are the best for what they yield, but I'd say only really pay attention to that if you're degenning on this game and you're prepared to invest heavily into cranking out PR blueprints and gold gear blueprints. You can only research one project at a time. Once you finish one, the project list refreshes, so make sure to pick the one that you want the most out of the 5 that you initially get. And once a day, you can manually refresh your project batch in case you don't see any that you like, and you get that refresh back at daily reset, which is always at midnight Pacific Standard Time. Yes, even when daylight savings changes. And the third tab is your Shipyard, where you go to actually develop your PR boats. Currently for NA Azur, we have access to just the first set of PR boats: Mordred, Spaz 12, Jean, Yeptune, Ibuki, and Izumo. In order to begin development on a PR boat, select the one that you want and hit develop, assuming that you met the prerequisite of having a set number of specific faction boats already obtained, and that you aren't already working on another PR boat in the meantime. For example, Ibuki requires you to have at least 20 Japanese Vanguard boats, which are either destroyers or cruisers, in your account before you can begin her development. Once you start development, you have 8 stages to complete in order to actually obtain the boat. These stages are universal, meaning that you need to do them for all PR boats, at least for these first 6. The first stage is gathering 1 million combat XP using specific boats that fulfill the requirements. In the case of Neptune, you have to use British cruisers. The second stage is to complete 5 research projects in the previous tab. The third stage is to gather and pay 10 purple retrofit blueprints depending on the boat type. The fourth stage is the combat XP mission again, but this time you need double the XP, which is 2 million. Good luck. And the 5th stage is to complete 8 more research projects. The 6th stage is submitting 5 gold retrofit blueprints, and the 7th and 8th stages are to pay either 20k or 30k coin depending on the PR boat type, and 5 wisdom cubes. In case you haven't been warned already, PR boats are notorious for taking a long time to obtain just because of the sheer grind you have to do to get them, mainly because of the XP stages. So be patient with them and you'll get your PR boat waifus eventually. Of note, when you first start PR development, all the stages are time locked except for the first one. You need to wait a total of 6 days or so to let all these stages unlock, so at minimum you're looking at just under a week to be able to fully develop a new PR boat. Though once all the stages are unlocked, you can do any of them in any order at your convenience. You still need to get 3 million XP though, there's no escaping that. And finally, once you do manage to obtain a PR boat, this tab is also where you go to enhance them. Unlike most other boats, PR boats can only be enhanced with their respective PR blueprints and not common boat fodder. and their stats are determined by what's called their development level, or dev level for short. All PR boats have a max dev level of 30, but in order to reach that, you need 343 blueprints that correspond to that boat that you're trying to level. So not only will it take you a long time to get a PR boat, but it also takes a long time to fully enhance her too. Because of this, some PR boats like Monarch end up being combat ready faster because they don't need to have that high of a dev level to be used effectively, while others like St. Louis and Neptune do need high dev levels to fight effectively. You can switch developments to another PR boat for whatever reason and still keep the progress you've made on your previous boat, but I'd expect that the timers for the stages that were still logged freeze until you resume development for that boat. Also, if you begin development on one boat but you change your mind and want to switch to another, you have to wait one full day before switching. And no, you can't double dip on the XP for 2 PR boats at once. What I mean by this is that you can't start development on one PR boat and then switch to another PR boat expecting to get combat XP for both of them at once. It doesn't work that way, and whoever tells you that is also probably planning to raid Area 51 too. The next tab is your HQ, which is split into Academy and Dorm. Let's look at Academy first. Here you'll find a bunch of facilities that you can do stuff in. The lecture hall is where you can have up to 5 boats gain passive XP. The XP that you give boats studying in lectures comes from the XP that boats you have at level 100 or above get whenever you fight with them. You can't have boats at level 100 or over study in there, and you also can't start a class if you have a boat who's at her max level cap if she isn't fully limit broken yet. You can also upgrade your lecture hall so that it's more efficient in XP gain, but doing so costs both coin and time. For more details about the lecture hall, you can hit the help button up at the top. Oh, and you can also hit the home button up at the top right to go straight back to the main menu without having to go back to your Academy button first. Now I know why that one Mementos tab had this button. Moving on, the tactical class building, or TAC training is what I like to call it personally, is where you train boat skills. You get 2 training slots by default, but you can add a 3rd with gems if you'd like. In order to level a skill, you select a boat in any of its slots, select which skill you want to level, and then choose which textbook you want to use to level that skill with. As you've probably figured out, you need textbooks to level skills, and they come in 3 tiers, T1, T2, and T3, and they come in 3 different types: offensive, defensive, and support. T1 books give 100 XP and take 2 hours, T2 books give 300 XP and take 4 hours, and T3 books give 800 XP and take 8 hours. You can use any book on any skill, but if you use a matching book with a matching skill, for example, a support book for a support skill, you get 50% extra skill XP, so try to do that whenever you can. Jumping ahead a bit here, but if you go into the items tab, you can use 6 T1 books to craft 1 T2 book. You can't craft T3 books though, unfortunately, which, given how fast you can burn through these books, I really feel like they should allow that. Next is the munitions shop, or one of the ways to get to the munitions shop anyway. Here you can find items that you can buy with coin or with gems in case you're a whale, and they sell anything from tech boxes to textbooks to dorm food and gear plates. Every once in a while you'll even find a wisdom cube on sale for coin. In addition, some items will have random discounts on them that range anywhere from 10 to 60 or even 70% off, I think. So always come check the munitions shop to see what you can buy, assuming you have the spare coin to do so, of course. Note that the shop refreshes 3 times a day, once at daily reset, second at noon Pacific, and third at 6 PM Pacific. You can also manually reset the shop, but it'll cost you gems to do so, so probably not a great idea unless you're a whale and you have gems to burn. In the middle, you have the Medallion Center, where you can view the medals you've earned for playing the game, the most important of which obviously has got to be the Flex Medal. The last 2 buildings are Canteen and Merchant. These passively produce free oil and coin for you to gather whenever they're ready. The more you upgrade them, the more free oil and coin they can produce and stockpile for you, so I'd suggest upgrading these to max as soon as you can whenever you're able. Moving on to the dorm, this is where you can put together the perfect dorm for your chibi boat waifus. You can buy preset dorm themes from the shop using dorm coins or individual furniture pieces and decorate your dorm however you like that way. And of course, you can share your dorms through social media if you really want to flex your dorm that badly. You can also play around with your chibi boats, and they have their own unique little animations that even change depending on what costume they have on. They can even interact with some of the furniture pieces, like sit on chairs and benches, take baths, howl lewd, and sleep on beds. Or if you're a Sandy cultist like me, you can pull out our stage and put your boats on them one by one and see how they react. As for the gameplay functions of the dorm, it helps the boats you've placed in them recover their morale faster and gives them passive XP gain for as long as they're in the first floor of the dorm. And like lectures, you can have up to 5 boats in dorm, though you only get 2 unlocked by default and you have to unlock the 3 others using gems. There's also a second floor that you can unlock again with gems, but it doesn't have the XP gain like the first floor does, only the morale recovery effect. But it is a whole nother floor to decorate if dorm decoration and stuff like this is kinda your thing. Every so often, the boats in your dorm will produce hearts or dorm coins for you, and you just need to tap the hearts and coins to collect them. Hearts raise that boat's affection slightly, while coins give you anywhere from 1 to 3 dorm coins that you can spend on dorm furniture and all that. Note that they'll only give you dorm coins and hearts while you have food stocked up. Once the dorm runs out of food, they stop generating them. The dorm coins and hearts aren't the biggest deal in the world, and it's not like it's gonna kill you if you don't have food to stock in the dorm, but if you let your waifu starve, you're one of those shitty admirals that Akebono loves talking about. Oh wait, this game doesn't have her yet, sorry, my bad. And lastly, you can name your dorms up at the top left next to your back button. Next tab on the list is Depot. Here you have 3 more tabs, Craft, Gear, and Item. You get defaulted to the Item tab where you can see all the items you have in your account, like cog chips, textbooks, retrofit blueprints, cubes, tech boxes, PR blueprints, medals, finishers, dorm food, and other miscellaneous event items. And just like textbooks, you can craft T2 retrofit blueprints and T2 and T3 tech boxes, though as usual you can't craft T3 retrofit blueprints or T4 tech boxes. The Gear tab is where you can look at all of your equipment at a glance, though keep in mind that the gear that your boats already have equipped does not appear here. You can enhance your gear pieces here and disassemble ones that you don't want or need with a disassemble button over on the bottom left, along with how much equipment you have and your equipment cap. The Craft tab is where you can produce gear pieces directly, provided that you have enough equipment blueprints for them. This way you don't have to worry about the RNG of tech boxes, though you'll still have to deal with the RNG of blueprint drops, of course. Now for the Dock tab. This is where you can view all the boats that you have on your account. The game filters the boats you have currently assigned in your fleet formations up to the top for your convenience, but here you can see the profiles of your boats, take a look at their stats, skill levels, gear, skins, archive listings, and comment sections, which I personally love reading because usually they're just filled with nothing but memes, as the internet should be. Let's look a bit more in depth at the boat profile, starting from the top with the Retrofit tab. This is how you retrofit your boats if they have their retrofits implemented. It's basically a chain of upgrades. You start from the left and have to buy each upgrade in order to progress through the retrofit tech tree. Keep in mind that the later upgrades require you to purchase them multiple times, as indicated by the numbers in the upper right of each of the boxes. By doing this, you increase that boat's combat stats and efficiency. And once you reach the right side of the tech tree, you should see the modernization option. And once you upgrade this one fully, you've officially retrofitted your boat. This gives your boat a new CG and upgrades their rarity by 1 tier. For example, Saratoga is originally a purple boat, but by retrofitting her, she becomes a gold boat instead, which is a nice touch. Some retrofit boats even have the option to learn new skills after you've officially retrofitted them, so make sure to finish their tech trees completely, unless your name is Fuso or Yamashiro. Whatever the case, just remember that retrofitting your boats, especially your higher rarity ones, will cost you a lot of coin and retrofit blueprints. And when you do the modernization upgrade, you need an extra copy of the boat or a matching bowline to go along with it. And the extra skill that you can learn typically will cost you a chunk of purple plates to research, so make sure that you're adequately prepared. Next is the Enhance tab. This is how you enhance your boats, or in other words, you increase their stats. Much like this other game that I know, leveling your boats doesn't automatically increase their actual stats. All it does is increase their max stats so that you can increase their actual stats with enhancement fodder. Each stat can be increased by certain boat types, and to varying degrees. Destroyers increase a bit of firepower, a bit of reload, but a ton of torpedo. Light cruisers increase the same, but with a bit more of a balanced spread. Heavy cruisers increase only firepower and reload, but give considerable boosts to firepower. Battleships and battle cruisers also only give firepower and reload, but increase firepower dramatically. And only carriers can increase aviation alongside a bit of reload. If you feed a boat an identical copy for enhancement, that boat receives double the stat gain, though I'd only recommend this for lower rarity boats, since you'll want to save extra copies of purple and gold boats for limit breaking rather than enhancement. You can feed up to a dozen boats for enhancement. You can just hit the fill button underneath to autofill the enhancement slots for your convenience. This feature will only put in common boats and leave your blue rarity or higher boats alone, so you can just spam this button without having to worry about accidentally feeding your blue boats or higher, even if they're unlocked. And if you want to deselect the entire enhancement grid, just hit the empty button to clear it, and of course to actually enhance, hit the enhance button. The next tab is Limit Break. Limit Breaking is a mechanic that increases the level cap of your boat. By default, all boats have a level cap of 70 with no limit breaking. With one limit break, it goes up by 10 to 80, with a second one, it goes up to 90, and the third and final limit break takes it to 100. The one exception to this limit break system is PR. All PR boats do not require limit breaking and come with a default max cap of 100 right away, so at least you don't need to worry about giving them your gold bullets when you level them. Limit breaking requires either identical copies of a boat or either purple or gold bullets. Purple bullets can serve as identical copies of boats up to purple rarity, while gold bullets are reserved exclusively for gold boats. The first and second limit breaks only take one copy or one bullet each, but the third limit break takes two copies or two bullets. Limit breaking is also more expensive the higher the boat's rarity, so if you're planning to limit break a whole bunch of purple and gold boats, make sure you've got the coin to spare. By limit breaking, you also further increase your boat's combat efficiencies in various ways. The most notable improvements are the carrier's extra plane capacity, the destroyers and cruisers' ability to launch torps right away, I think, and the battleships and battle cruisers' extra main gun volleys. The game even gives you short little videos that demonstrate the bonus combat effects your boats will get when you limit break them for each stage, along with the stat gain too. Again, just remember that limit breaking your boats not only makes them stronger, but more expensive to field. This is why people often advise you to avoid limit breaking some of your farming boats if you don't have to. Next is the gear tab. This is where you outfit your boats and give them various pieces of gear. Most, if not all, boats have 5 slots available. The 2 on the left are your auxiliary gear slots, while the 3 on the right are your main weapon slots. But for repair vessels like Vestal and Scamcat though, this is a bit different. The aux slots are universal, meaning that most boats should have double aux gear slots, but the main gear slots will differ depending on the boat type. Carriers need planes, battleships need battleship guns, obviously, cruisers and destroyers need smaller guns, AA guns, and torpedoes, etc. The main slots also indicate a boat's efficiency with their respective gear. This helps differentiate boats of the same class so that they perform better with certain types of weapons. Gear is very important in this game. You'll hear me saying this quite a few times throughout this video, but having good gear that's adequately leveled is one of the most impactful things you can do for your account. It's to the point where the level of your gear and the kind of gear that you use is what makes or breaks a run in a tough map. I'd almost argue that having top tier gear is a bit more important than having top tier boats, but then I realized that boats like JB, Nagato, and Enterprise exist. Last tidbit about gear, just like the costumes for your boats, you can even give your gear their own little skins that change how the ammo they fire look in combat. So now if you've ever wanted your boats to fire literal fuck yous at enemy boats, well, if you played the Kizuna Ai collab and picked up some fuck you skins, well, that's one thing you can cross off your very short bucket list. And finally, the info tab, which we'll go over again but in more detail. This is where you view your boats' stats, level progression, currently equipped gear set, power level, and skills and skill levels. By tapping their skills, you can read their skill descriptions and effects. The gear sets button up top allows you to save your currently equipped loadout in one of 3 gear presets, so that when you switch out your boats' gear and want to return to the one you were using before, you can just hit the load button with the preset that you want, and it'll swap in that preset with just one button press. You can also unequip your boats' entire gear set here too, but for some reason you can't make this screen go away once you've opened it up, at least not to my knowledge, so I have to back out to the dock screen first and then go back in if I want to fiddle around some more with the gear set menu. Anyway, for those of you who don't like having to constantly switch around gear between your boats, this could be a convenient option to use instead. This screen is also where you check your boats' affection level with the affection counter up at the top. The screen also shows you the buff they get for being at their current affection level, and if you've married them, it also shows you the exact day that you did so. Speaking of affection, boats start out at 50 affection by default when you first get them. You can increase them by using them in combat, where after each successful win, they'll gain a bit of affection and a bit more if they get MVP. This doesn't include exercises, by the way. You can also gather hearts from them whenever they appear while they're dormed, like we discussed earlier. And lastly, whoever your secretary is gains 1 affection every 5 hours or so, but it stops once it hits 90, then you have to reach 100 with them manually. The default affection cap is 100, at which point you can marry, which you can do by pulling up the affection menu and hitting the Val button. You'll need an oath ring to do this, but you knew that already. When you marry a boat, her affection cap is doubled to 200 as a way to incentivize you to continue using that boat. Each affection stage comes with its own greeting line when you first open up a boat's profile, and your boats get a slight increase in combat stats depending on their current affection levels, which caps out at 12% if your boat is at 200 affection. However, if you're a piece of shit and end up using your boats for way too long, specifically by constantly fielding them when they have 0 morale, their affections can and eventually will drop, and they'll actually reach a disappointed state where they fucking hate your guts. And the final tab down at the bottom, the shop tab. Here you can access both the munitions shop that we've been to before, plus the whale shops. Let's revisit the munitions shop first, since there's a few things we didn't cover back in the academy. The munitions shop has 2 more tabs, core tab and merit tab. The core tab is where you can buy special items with core data, a resource that you can farm slowly over time from doing hard mode runs of story chapters. This shop refreshes at the end of each month and sells some really good stuff, like rainbow dildos and gold 381s, and they'll be updated with new gear as the game goes on. The merit tab is where you can exchange merit for stuff. Ignore the shitty tech boxes and purple bullets. What you're really here for are SDK, small E, and gold bullet. You get merit for doing PvP battles, as I'll explain a bit later. The other tabs are all whale tabs. Let's start with the gems tab, since that feels like the logical place to start. You can purchase gems here, and much like this other Chinese mobile game that I keep referencing throughout this video, you have lots of gem packs to choose from that give you varying amounts of gem bonuses that increase the more money you pay for a pack. And these packs have first-time purchase bonuses where the game simply gives you double the gems of that particular pack for the first time you buy each of them. You can also buy the trade license for $8 that gives you 500 gems instantly and 200 oil, 1000 coin, and a cube every day for 30 days. Naturally, if you're a whale, the $80 packs are the most value since they give you the most bonus gems. Huh, sounds like another mobile game I know too. Now let's go over to the items. Here's where you can buy various account stuff like name changers, rings, coins, finishers, cubes, and more dock and gear space. Let me say this first and foremost, if you plan to use gems to buy coins, come to this tab and buy coins here because you get a slight discount by buying the 15k coins for 450 gems deal. I'd forgotten that this was here and wasted a few gems buying coins directly from the coin counter up top, so don't make the same mistake that I made if you care about your gems at all. You don't want Scamcat taking more of your gems than necessary. Next is the packs tab. You can buy various packs that contain cubes, dorm coins, and finishers, but the most important packs are the oil packs and the costume packs whenever they're available. The oil packs give you 10k oil for 600 gems, which is the best way to stock up on oil in case you're willing to pay for it. But once you've used the packs up, you have to wait for them to refresh before buying them again, and usually you can only buy them once per event. And finally, the thirstiest button in this tab, the skins tab. Here you can view all the skins that are currently available for purchase, which are even categorized in case you're looking for a specific fetish. Don't worry, we won't judge. Some skins are costume only, while others come with a background change, which switches out your main menu for a thematic background to match that skin. But you do need to have both the skin equipped and the boat with that skin set as your secretary in order to see it. And of course, you've got your live 2Ds, which usually come with both a costume and background change, along with your precious animations. Summer Atago doesn't get a background for some reason, unfortunately. There are also costume sales every once in a while, so if you want to save gems, consider waiting for those sales if you'd like. Now moving up to the left side of the main menu, you've got your photo button and your background button. If you like sharing your degen weeb shit over social media, then I'd expect you to know this photo button much better than me. Above these is what I like to call your collectibles hub. Here you can see your canteen and merchant, commissions, tac training, and research projects all at once, meaning that you can quickly collect whatever's done and reset projects, commissions, and tac training. By default, if any of your commissions or TAC training completes, your device will alert you that they are done. For some reason, it doesn't do this for your research projects though. You'll be alerted if your oil or coin stockpiles are also close to reaching their max cap, and when they do hit their caps, they'll stop auto-generating, so make sure to collect them regularly to avoid wasting oil and coin. Not only will your device alert you with a beep or a vibration or whatever it does, but the game will also let you know that something's done with a small red exclamation mark. The exclamation mark appears over the Collectibles Hub, HQ, Lab, Missions, and Build in the main menu, all of which tell you that there's something that's done. Though for HQ, Mission, and Build, it's a bit different since the exclamation marks there mean that you have hearts and dorm coins to collect from dorm, missions that you can redeem, and build orders that are complete for you to collect. On the top left of the main menu, you've got the animated chibi of your secretary ship, along with your account name, your commander level, and your level progression. Tapping the chibi will take you to your account overview screen, which displays your account data. This is where you can find your user ID number and where you can use the identity change thing from the gem shop in case you want to change your name. Down below, you've got a few more options. Skins, so that you can choose different skins for your secretary boat. Secretary, so you can set different boats as your secretary. And your background and live 2D toggles in case you're playing on a potato phone. You also have a custom message that you can set so that other people can see it when they check out your profile. You also have the style button up at the top right, and here you can customize a few things like your account emblem, which is displayed on your guild list if you're part of one, or in chat whenever you talk. By default, it'll show your currently assigned secretary, and if you've married your secretary boat, your emblem will feature a special married decoration around it to signify that. As of the Bismarck event, if you were able to obtain all the new boats from that event and get them all fully limit broken, you could get the Iron Blood Oath emblem decoration, which replaces the Oath decoration and honestly looks pretty badass. And as you can see from the menu, there are more emblem decorations to come in the future. The same applies to your chat box, is what I'm assuming the chat option is for, though since I don't have anything here, I'm not quite sure on this. The third tab is Medallion, where you can set up to 5 of your service medals that you could view back at your academy screen on your account for display, though I'm not really sure how your medals can be viewable by other people. But I guess they look cool hanging on the top of your profile screen, so whatever, I guess. And the last button on the main menu, the training missions. I'm still stuck on easy because clearly I'm a scrub and didn't do them, but for newer players, I'd recommend doing this because you'll be rewarded with supplies, gear, and even guaranteed boats like Portland for easy, Nelson for hard, and both a gold bullion and one SSR that you can choose out of these 4 for exam. Final thing to wrap up the main menu UI, your default background is dynamic and actually changes to match your local time. So for example, if the game sees that it's nighttime, it'll display your base at night too. So that covers the entire main menu UI. Now let's dive into the battle screen and explain everything in there. The battle tab is, like I mentioned briefly earlier, where you can go to actually play the game, and no, playing with the chibis of your boats in dorm doesn't count. Here you can view the story chapters. As of this video, we've recently gotten World 12, but if you're just starting out, you can't see all the chapters at once. Instead, you have to unlock the next chapter by clearing all 4 nodes of the previous one first. In order to clear a node, you just need to complete enough runs of it until the node says clear. Typically, it'll only take you like 2 or 3 runs for the earlier chapters, but it'll drag on to 4 or 5 or even more as you go further. When you're clearing a node, there will be a percentage written on the node itself that tells you how far along you are in clearing it. However, in order to 3-star a node, you need to complete 3 objectives. Defeat the flagship, defeat a number of escort fleets, and defeat all enemies. Killing the flagship is simple, just beat the boss fleet at the end, but killing the escort fleets is the longest objective since you need to destroy that many enemy fleets in that node, though at least you don't have to worry about hunting down specific types of fleets. I don't think ambush fleets count though, but I could be wrong. You don't want to be fighting ambush fleets in the first place anyway, since all they do is force you to waste oil. And the third objective is to defeat all enemies, which is to sink all enemy fleets that spawn in on the map. And this doesn't include ambush fleets because technically they don't spawn into the map like normal enemy fleets do. This basically requires you to have 2 fleets for reasons I'll explain later once we start talking about actual battle UI. Tapping a node will bring up a window that shows you your progress in 3-starring that node. It also shows you the potential drops that you can get in that node, like the boat drop list, equipment blueprint list, plates, tech boxes, and coin. On the left, you can see the threat level of the node. Threat level is a mechanic that allows you to boost the defense of your fleets in the node the more you clear it after you 3-star it. A node's default threat level is lethal, and it'll stay that way until you 3-star it and keep running the node past that, and slowly it'll improve the threat level from lethal to moderate to low, and then finally to safe. The lower the threat level is, generally the higher the defense bonus your fleets will get when they run the node. So this is a mechanic that's designed to make farming a node easier the more you run it, which is useful if you're grinding a node for a specific drop boat or something else. And finally, hitting the go button will pull up your deployment screen. The first 2 fleets will be listed here by default, but the choose buttons next to each fleet slot on the right lets you pick which fleets you want to deploy, since you can have up to 4 fleets preset, while the clear buttons just removes a currently selected fleet. Beneath your surface fleet slots, you can also deploy 1 submarine fleet with your surface fleets if you'd like. They're not necessary to have to start a battle, but the option is there. One important thing to mention is that you can't modify your fleet compositions in this screen. You have to go all the way back out to the fleet formation tab in order to edit, which is admittedly kind of a pain. Which is weird because for your dailies, you can actually edit your fleet compositions right before playing them, but anyways. Once you're happy with your fleets, hit the go button again and you'll deploy into the node. But before we explain the battle UI, let's quickly go over the buttons on the bottom of the main battle UI. On the bottom left is your hard mode. This is an alternate set of main story chapters that accompany the normals chapters. There are a few key differences between normal and hard. To start with, you can only do hard mode 3 times a day. It used to be 6 runs a day, but Yostar reduced it and increased the drop chances of the loot from hard mode runs so that people wouldn't have to grind it so hard. In addition, hard mode gives you the chance to farm 2 materials that you can't normally farm: retrofit blueprints and core data. The more difficult the hard mode chapter you play, the more core data you get per run, so ideally you should farm the latest hard mode chapter nodes that you can. Hard mode also gives you clearing mode. Once you get a hard mode down to safe, you can now run that node in clearing mode, which basically gets rid of all the trash fleets and spawns the enemy flagship straight into the map for you to fight right away, though for some reason you can still run into and fight ambush fleets, which is kinda dumb. Other than that though, clearing mode is another mechanic that the devs put into the game to make hard mode runs a lot faster if you put in the work beforehand. One last difference that hard mode has over normal is the deployment screen. You can't use your preset fleets from the formation tab here. Instead, you have to manually set up your fleets. In addition, while normal maps let you just take whatever fleets you throw together, hard mode has requirements that your fleets must meet so that you can enter in the first place. There are 3 types of stat recs that your fleets need to hit. The first rec is always average level, but the next 2 can be various types of stats. Most of the time it'll just be firepower and torpedo, but sometimes there'll be a curveball thrown in there like anti-submarine or some shit. The game takes stats from both of your fleets in order to match the requirements, so for runs like these, it's probably a good idea to deploy double fleets. There's one more requirement, and that's your fleet composition itself. Normal runs don't have specific ship type slots, but hard mode runs do, and if you want to put a boat in that slot, she has to be from that type. But as long as your fleets meet the entry requirements, you don't have to comply with the specific boat slots as long as you don't put anybody in them. Once you hit the stat recs, you can go to hard mode. Oh, and deploying to any battle, whether it's normal, hard, or an event node or whatever, even before you start fighting, costs you 10 oil, which is a flat rate across all battles, with the one exception being your dailies. Moving on to the other buttons over on the bottom right, starting with the daily tab. These are special quests that you can do to quickly and easily farm different kinds of supplies, but not only can you only do each raid 3 times a day, like hard mode, but the dailies rotate every day except for the TAC training daily. Escort mission, or the one with potato on it, has you stay alive against super tanky torpedo boats that you're not meant to kill, but just dodge the torpedoes that they constantly fire at you. Completing it gives you lots of plates that you can use to enhance your gear and weapons, and they're available on Mondays and Thursdays. For this, just take a 2-boat fleet with 1 backline and 1 frontline and use manual to dodge the torpedoes, kinda like this. Enemy torps never reach your backline for some reason, so you don't have to worry about your backline taking damage. This is a mechanic that's also persistent throughout the game's combat. Advanced mission, or the one with Bunny Longsword on it, is another survival quest, but here you have to fend off against waves of suicide boats and protect your backline from them. Completing it gives you textbooks, and they're available on Tuesdays and Fridays. For this, you may want to have either a stacked backline or a stacked frontline, or even both if you really feel like you need it. A stacked backline with battleships or battle cruisers that have secondary guns are a safer bet in my opinion because they can defend themselves from incoming suicide boats more easily than your Vanguard fleet can shoot them down since they spawn in a lot at a time and come in really fast. Beheading operation, Maruka collaboration confirmed, or the one with big E on it, is a kill quest where you fight against 3 sets of bosses in a row. First you fight Myoko, then Tona, and then the Cranes. Completing it gives you tech boxes that you can open for a chance to get good gear, and they're available on Wednesdays and Saturdays. TAC Training, the one with small e on it, is another kill quest where you have the options to fight certain bosses with a specific type of weapon set. You use carriers for the aviation quest, battleships and battle cruisers for the shelling quest, and torps for the torp quest. Completing it primarily gives you cog chips and a bit of coin, just not as much as the others. All daily raids here give you a chunk of coins per run on top of whatever other rewards that they can give you, but the higher the tier of raid, the better your drops are and the more of it you get. Each raid, except for TAC Training, is split into 5 tiers that are gated by level, meaning that your commander level needs to match the next tier of raid in order for you to do it. And lastly, all the raids are available on Sunday, which means that you can do all of them for a total of 12 daily raids. But that's not all! As of one of the more recent patches, NA Azur Lane has now added a new set of dailies called Supply Line Disruption, though it's technically a weekly because you can only do it twice a week. This weekly is unique in that you control your preset fleet of submarines manually to avoid sea mines and attack boats, to destroy enemy cargo boats, and the sirens at the end. You need to destroy at least some of the cargo boats in order to get an S ranking, on top of killing the sirens, and each time you beat it, the weekly gives you submarine equipment blueprints so that eventually you can outfit your subs with good sub gear. On the topic of subs, perfect segue into SOS fights. Above the exercise button, you have your SOS signals, which ping for special battles that you can do to fight enemy submarines and potentially get more submarine gear blueprints. You can only have a certain number of SOS signals stacked up at once. Mine is 8, but it could be different for others. Your signal range goes as far as your last fully completed story chapter, which means that every time you use a ping, the game can randomly give you a sub-fight in any chapter within your range, and naturally the higher the chapter the ping is, the harder it'll be, so prepare accordingly. You can also have multiple pings active at the same time in case you get a ping in a higher chapter that you don't really feel like doing right away, but I'm pretty sure that there's a limit to how many pings you can have active at the same time, maybe like 4 or something, I don't know, could be wrong. Keep in mind that each sub-fight you ping sticks around for 12 hours before expiring on its own, so make sure to do them before they go away. When you enter a sub-fight, make sure to have at least one of your fleets bring ASW gear or anti-sub gear like sonar and depth charges, because without them you're going to wonder why your fleet failed the boss fight with no more time remaining. There's a few more nuances that I'd like to explain with sub-fights, but I'll leave those for later once I can go over normal fight mechanics first, so for now let's move on. Or you can just hit the information button on the lower left to learn more about sub-fights on your own. The commissions button is where you can see your currently running comms and any others that might be available for you to choose from once the others are done. Commissions are categorized into daily and urgent. Every day starting from daily reset you get a set list of comms that you can run. You can choose from 5, but the maximum number of comms you can have running at once is 4. When you complete a commission, it rotates out for a new one from the list of comms that I mentioned earlier. The only exception to this is self-training, which is your level grinding commission, and it's always there no matter how many times you run it. Commissions give you a steady income of a variety of supplies, which include oil, dorm coins, XP, and plates depending on their type. Some of them also give you a chance to get stuff like more cubes, finishers, textbooks, and even a few extra gems, or a new boat on the rare occasion. These comms are always active for you to run until either you complete them or until daily reset. The urgent comms, however, are only up for a limited time. Most of them show up when you're grinding, so whenever you see an urgent commission window pop up after you complete a map, that's what it means. They also cost some oil to run depending on their potential rewards, and they have different expiration timers that remove them once their times are up, so make sure to set your urgent comms right away if you see some that you want to take. In addition, at 8 PM Pacific every day, the game always gives you 4 urgent comms for you to choose from. I call them the late night commissions because you're supposed to set them before you go to bed, and they'll be done for you to collect when you wake up in the morning. These late night comms stay active for 7 hours and always expire at 3 AM Pacific. and they're very important because they give you lots of oil, cubes, and a few extra T3 textbooks if you're lucky, so be sure to set those. All comms have boat requirements that you need to meet, like minimum level, number of boats in commission, and type restrictions, so only until you meet those requirements can you run that commission. Or you can just do what everyone else does and hit the recommended button to autofill boats to send on those comms and just get it over with. And the last button on the bottom right, the exercise tab. This is your PvP section, and you can view your PvP stats and rank on the bottom left. In the middle, you can find 4 other players that you can potentially fight against, along with the power levels of their fleets and their own PvP ranks. To the right of the players, you have your season duration, or more specifically, how much time until the next season starts. And each season usually runs for about 2 weeks, and upon season refresh, your PvP rank gets reset too. Beneath the season time, you have the number of PvP fights you can currently do, along with how long until you get more. And the new opponent button beneath that refreshes the list of players that you see in case you don't feel like you can win any of them, though remember that you can only refresh the list up to 4 or 5 times a day before the game doesn't let you refresh anymore. You get 5 exercises 3 times a day, which are the same times when the munitions shop resets, but keep in mind that you can only hold up to 10 exercises at a time. And at season refresh, no matter how many PvP fights you had going into the next season, the game just resets you back to 5. So you can't just stack up exercises going into the next season thinking that you can get a head start on everyone else. On the bottom right, you have your defense fleet. This is the fleet that other people see whenever you show up on their PvP matches. Some people like me go try hard, while other people just set up meme fleets, so it's up to you on what kind of defense fleet you want. For attacking fleets, you'll have to set it up when you go into a fight against somebody else and change it there. The 3 buttons below that are rules, ladder, and supply. The rules just tell you how much merit you get for rank promotions, and we already know where the ladder and supply buttons take us. Speaking of merit, PvP matches are where you can farm merit for the merit shop. The higher PvP rank you are, the more merit you obtain, along with getting more chunks of merit for each promotion that you receive. Since I treat PvP simply as a way to get merit quickly so that I can buy gold bullets on the regular, I'm not privy to all the latest and greatest PvP strats and meta comps and all that, so if you're the type to be interested in those, you'll have to look those up on your own. Yeah, says the guy almost running full IJN memes with Amagi, Double Fox, and Yuki. Now, finally onto the battle screen. When you enter a fight, you'll be presented with a grid that depicts the map, which can change size, appearance, and geography depending on the node. Your fleets will spawn in designated areas on the map, usually together, but some nodes spawn them away from each other. As always, let's look at your UI first. On the top left, you'll find your threat level, ammo counter, which tells you your damage bonus based on your currently selected fleet's remaining ammo, and current fleet formation, which we'll explain in just a little bit. On the right is your 3-star objectives tab. Mainly you'll use that to keep an eye on how many more enemy fleets you need to kill to finish the kill objective for that node. On the bottom right, you'll first find 2 buttons, another fleet formation and emergency repair. Pressing fleet formation lets you toggle through 3 different fleet formation types for your currently selected fleet: single line, double line, and circular. Single line increases your vanguard's firepower and torpedo damage by 15%, but reduces your vanguard's evasion by 10%. Double line increases your vanguard's evasion by 30%, but decreases their firepower and torp damage by 5%. And circular, or diamond, whichever you want to call it, increases your whole fleet's anti-air by 20% with no penalties. Single line is good enough for early game and most of mid game, but once you start getting up into the chapters that begin posing serious threats to your fleets, switch to double line and stay there. Sacrificing a bit of your vanguard's attack power in exchange for improved evasion is a great trade-off in your favor, especially when you realize your backline's still going to have full damage output anyway. And save circle formation for World 12, where airstrike damage starts getting really bad. The emergency repair button is where you can see how many fleet repairs you have. You can pick up emergency repair gels as random drops in some maps where you see a question mark node, and if you get one and need to repair your fleet, this button is what you press in order to use it. And it'll restore 10% HP to your entire fleet, but only the fleet that physically picked up the repair gel can use it. The other buttons below are retreat, switch, and attack. Retreat pulls your fleets out of the battle completely, and you forfeit your progress you had in that battle, though you'll still keep the drops and rewards that you got for each individual fight within that battle, even if you do retreat. Other than losing your progress though, there's no other penalties for leaving early, at least not to my knowledge. Switch toggles your control between your two fleets. If you only have one fleet deploy, you don't need the switch button since you'll only really use it for double fleet deployments. You can also directly tap on the fleet you want to take control of, but using the switch button is sometimes safer because if you tap on the wrong tile, it'll tell the fleet that you're currently controlling to go over right next to the other fleet, which sometimes you don't really want. Ironically, you probably won't use the attack button too much. It's mainly used to quickly resume a fight that you are about to take because you have to back out real quick to go take care of something else, since you can just back out right out of the fight if you need to go reset a commission or something. The help button gives you a ton of useful information about sub-battles and sub-mechanics, along with other battle information, which saves me a lot of time, so if you want to learn about the basics of submarines, just read up on the stuff the help button shows you. Also, it has this picture of the different kinds of enemy fleets and the symbols for small, medium, and large fleets that's probably more useful for you as a new player. And on the left, you can see the statuses of individual boats in your currently selected fleet. If there's a boat who's on low enough HP, she'll have a repair icon over her that indicates that you can perform emergency repairs on her. You get one free emergency repair a day, and after that you either have to pay for it with gems or have repair boats in your fleet to get more. At least, I think that's how it works. Now enough of the UI crap, been talking about it for the past fucking 30 minutes by now. In normal and standard hard mode maps, you can move your fleet to wherever you want on the map that they can directly access. If geography or enemy fleets are blocking the place you want your fleets to go, you'll have to go around or kill the enemy fleet that's in the way. Enemy fleets will spawn in with you. After each fight, the map spawns in another wave of enemy boats. In my experience, the maps tend to spawn enemy boats in designated areas around the map. While their exact positions might change slightly from run to run, once you've farmed a node enough times, you can get a general sense of the rough areas where enemies will likely spawn. After anywhere from 3 to 6 fights, the map will spawn the boss fleet for you to fight. The earlier chapters will take less fights to spawn the boss, whereas later chapters need more. But once you spawn in the boss fleet, all you need to do to beat the map is to kill the boss fleet. Each fleet that you deploy always starts with 5 ammo. Each battle that they get into consumes 1 ammo. Unlike some other games, your fleets can still keep fighting even if they hit 0 ammo, but they take a 50% damage penalty in order to do so. Remember a little bit ago how I said you want 2 fleets to complete the destroy all enemy fleets objective when you're 3-starring a node? You're gonna run out of ammo eventually if the map you're playing doesn't have an ammo cache, so running dual fleets means double the ammo that you can potentially work with. Though I'd still recommend that you not use your boss fleet so that they can go into the boss fight at full power. Some maps have ammo stockpiles, like I mentioned just now, that you can pick up in case a fleet gets low. These caches give 3 additional ammo before being depleted. The question mark nodes also give +1 ammo, though it's a random drop. Speaking of these nodes, the question mark node and the ammo cache nodes are pickups that your fleets can take if you move them onto those pickup tiles. The question mark nodes can give you some coin, an oxy coke, repair gel, 1 ammo, or a low tier tech box. There may be more pickups in the future, but for now, those are the ones you'll see most often. Now let's get into the actual gameplay. Thank God we get to kill shit now. To initiate a fight, have your selected fleet move over to an enemy fleets tile, and the battle confirmation screen will come up. This is where you can revise any battle settings you need to before the actual fight begins, like the auto combat toggle, repair gel usage, and most importantly, fleet formation. Don't forget that you have to beat 1-3 in order to unlock auto battle. It's important to get your fleet formation right back out at the fleet formation tab, but in case you forgot to reposition some boats, you can just do it here and the fleet will keep that revised formation for the rest of the battle, though it'll go back to how you had it in the formation tab once you enter another node. You can also see what kinds of drops you can get from the battle you're about to go into, as well as how much oil it'll cost you to fight this battle. You can also just back out of the screen to go look at the map again. You now have the option to retreat the fleet from the battle they're about to get into, but while there's no direct penalty to that fleet for making it retreat early, it'll retreat from the entire node too, not just the battle. So in other words, you lose that fleet permanently for the rest of the fight. The one exception to this is when you send in a fleet to fight against the boss fleet. Instead of backing them out of the whole battle, it just spits out that fleet next to the boss fleet instead. When you enter combat, you get, you guessed it, a whole nother UI. Your most important buttons are your manual and auto combat toggle on the top left, the pause button on the top right in case you want to leave the fight or just pause for the time being, and your manual controls on the bottom. The pause button lets you just back out of the fight like it's a back button, but it forfeits the progress in that battle only. This means that if a battle's going poorly for you and you want to redo it, you can just do that by leaving the battle and re-entering the fight. I think you have to pay the oil cost again to do so, but I could be wrong about that. If you like playing on manual or have to, you have a control stick on the bottom left that you can use to control the movement of your vanguard only. You can't move your backline. The bottom right has 3 main buttons: airstrike, torpedo, and main gun volley. The airstrike button lets you manually launch airwaves to attack if you have carriers with equipped planes, and each carrier you have in your backline can store up to 2 airwaves. Unfortunately, if you have multiple airstrikes stocked up, you can't choose which carrier's airstrike to send out first. It's basically whoever gets their airwaves loaded first that uses theirs first on a kind of like a first come, first serve basis. Aside from their damage output, airstrikes are also very important because they're screen clearers. For all you Toho nerds out there, name drop, airstrikes are the bomb mechanic in this game, where the instant you use an airstrike, all enemy shots and torpedoes disappear from the screen. Though, of course, the enemies themselves don't. The torpedo button, as you might guess, lets you launch torpedoes from your vanguard boats that have torps equipped. Like with airstrikes, you can't control whose torps you launch if you have multiple stacks of them available from multiple boats. It's again on a first come, first serve kind of basis, and you can store up to 2 torp volleys at once per boat that has a torp launcher equipped. And the main gun button lets you fire main gun volleys from your battleships or battle cruisers. These shots come from whatever main guns that the battleships have equipped, or if they don't have a main gun equipped, they have a default gun that they'll use, but it's typically very weak, and you're much better off giving your battleships proper main guns. When a main volley is fired, the game goes into a bit of bullet time, which makes the first shot of the volley very accurate, even on auto. On manual, you can aim the first shot yourself by holding down the volley button. When you do this, the game gives you crosshairs that you can use to select your target, though you don't get bullet time just aiming, only when your boat actually shoots. Speaking from experience, I'd recommend that you try aiming for the top half of your target. Due to the way volley shots spread in this game, they're not usually perfectly accurate, so if you aim at the bottom half of your target, there's a chance that your shots can barely whiff because the enemy hitboxes don't really extend downwards very far. But if you hit a manual shot like this, you get 20% extra damage for that shot, so more incentive for you to play on manual. Of note, battleships and battle cruisers can fire follow-up volleys after the first one, depending on their limit break stage. At max limit break, they can fire up to 3 volleys total, as we mentioned before at the info tab, but the volleys after the first one cannot be controlled and are always fired with automatic targeting. Keep in mind that if you have auto on, your boats will immediately use their main guns, torpedoes, and airstrikes the instant they get charged and won't bother trying to stack them up, meaning that your boats will end up wasting some of their efficiency by throwing out airstrikes at bad times, launch torps at the bottom of the screen or the top of the screen so that half the torps won't even do anything because they go off screen and blow up, whatever, and fire volleys at the same target. There is a fourth button that only shows up when you have a submarine fleet deployed, and it physically deploys your subs into live combat to assist your surface fleet. For a short period of time, which varies on the subs you deploy and their skills if they apply, your subs stay submerged and automatically attack with mass torpedoes at the enemies. Subs are immune to damage while they're submerged, unless of course the enemies themselves have ASW gear and weapons, which may or may not be a thing in the future. Once their oxygen runs out though, they have to resurface. If they have destroyer guns or skills that activate when they resurface, they'll keep attacking using those for just a few moments before they slowly retreat out of the fight. But during this time, since they're surfaced, they're exposed to enemy fire. Submarines definitely seem like glass cannons in this game, so if you can help it, try to call in a subfleet either when you know a fight is about to end, or when your fleet really needs some extra backup. Speaking of deploying subs, they can only be deployed to certain nodes of the storage chapters, specifically only the 4th nodes of chapters 3 and up, the 3rd nodes of chapters 8 and up, the 2nd nodes of chapters 10 and up, and all nodes from chapters 11 and up. They can also be deployed to SOS battles, naturally, and to any event stages, which is probably their biggest strength, other than some of the late game story chapters. When you first deploy into a node with subs, they'll have a hunting range marked in red that's predetermined and can't be moved. Within this range, if you had them on aggressive, which is on by default, your subs will chase after any enemy fleet that spawn within their hunting range. And every time any of your surface fleet moves, your subs move 2 tiles. Once they reach an enemy fleet though, they attack it and damage it by a certain percentage based on how strong the subs themselves are, basically softening them up for your surface fleet to come in and have an easier time killing them. Like the surface fleets, subs spawn in with their own ammo supply, which varies depending on how many subs you have deployed, and each attack consumes 1 ammo. They won't attack the same target twice, I don't think, so once they've hit one target, they'll chase after the next target within their range, if there is one. Deploying your subs directly into an active fight, like we were talking about earlier, also consumes 1 ammo from your subs, and you can only do this if your surface fleet is fighting within the subs' hunting range. So if you're out of it even by 1 tile, guess what? You're shit out of luck. The one exception to this is the very recently added U-522, who has a skill that lets you call in the sub-squadron into a fight even if you're not within their hunting range, though be warned, you can only do this once per deployment. You can also set the submarines on passive so that they don't move around using the submarine stance toggle next to the fleet formation toggle too, in case you don't feel like having them move around all the time. I made a mistake earlier and said that the submarine hunting range can't be moved once you spawn in, and I was lucky enough to catch that mistake on my own, so hopefully you sub-lovers out there don't roast me. You in fact can move your subs' hunting range, known as repositioning, as indicated by the button below your subs' stance and the hunting range toggle. Normally running subs doesn't cost any extra oil, only their ammo, but if you want to reposition them so that they can assist in areas of the map that you want them to cover, you can do so at the cost of some oil. The chart I showed earlier graphs the reposition costs. Basically, the further away they need to reposition themselves, the more it's gonna cost you. And finally, there are 2 instant loss conditions: if your flagship dies or if your whole front line dies. If either of these happens, you immediately lose the fight, forfeit whatever drops you could have gotten for that fight, and that entire fleet gets yeeted out of the map, even if you had other boats still surviving. If that fleet was your last fleet on the map, you get kicked out to the map screen and lose all the progress you had during that run, though you still might keep the fleet kill objective for the 3-star. You'll have to fact check me on that though. And that's pretty much it for the actual gameplay itself. Sometimes you'll have to deal with special battle conditions like Kizna Ai's face blowing up on your screen randomly, but usually you don't really need to worry about that. Just kidding, haha, I forgot to elaborate more on ambushes. In normal and hard mode maps, you need to deal with a very annoying mechanic called ambushes. The more your fleets navigate around the map, the more likely they'll run into an enemy ambush fleet. How quickly they run into an ambush depends on the type of gear a fleet has and the actual fleet composition itself. Typically, carriers and destroyers are quote-unquote fast boats, and the more of them you have in a fleet, the less ambushes you'll run into on average, while cruisers and battleships are quote-unquote heavy boats and will make your fleets more likely to run into ambushes. There are 2 types of ambushes: an enemy airstrike and a proper ambush fleet, and it's random on which one you get if you do get ambushed. The airstrike just takes off a bit of HP off all the boats in the fleet that got ambushed, but the ambush fleet forces you to roll the dice and see if you can evade them based on evasion rate calculated from your fleet's specific auxiliary gear, or the lack thereof, and the fleet composition itself that we mentioned just earlier. If you fail to evade or intentionally take the fight for some reason, that costs you both oil and ammo because you have to fight the ambush fleet. And the worst part about it is that ambush fleets do not count towards enemy spawn progression or the kill objective for 3-starring a map, or at least I don't think they do. There is a way to avoid or at least delay running into an ambush fight. You can only get ambushed on an empty tile, or in other words, a tile where there isn't anything else occupying it. Enemy fleets that you already killed in battle will leave behind debris that occupies a tile where they initially spawned. And so if you move a fleet onto that tile or tiles, it's impossible for that fleet to run into an ambush fleet on that tile. So if you have multiple debris tiles adjacent to one another, you can actually use that as kind of like an ambush-free highway of sorts if it really comes down to it. This also applies if you're crossing a tile occupied by your other surface fleet. Since the tile there is technically occupied by your second fleet, if you move your first fleet over it, it won't have to worry about getting an ambush there. And of course the same applies to the ammo or random tiles. By far though, the best way to avoid dealing with ambushes is to have at least one boat in each of your fleets equip the SG radar gear, which is an auxiliary gear piece that decreases ambush chance and increases your chance to evade an ambush fight in case you get into one. Just don't equip multiple copies of them in the same fleet, since the game specifically tells you in the gear description that the effects don't stack. Thankfully for events, you almost never have to deal with annoying frickin' ambushes. There have been like 1 or 2 events where ambushes were still in play, but I think those were just smaller events like the Glorious Battle event and whatever else. The major ones like V-Deer, Fallen Wings, and Crimson Echoes don't have them at all, thankfully. But in exchange for these event maps, your fleet movement is limited to a certain number of tiles, which again is dependent on your fleet composition. Normally you have a 3-tile movement radius, but if you have a lot of heavy boats, like heavy cruisers and battleships, it can go down to just 2, or conversely, if you have a lot of fast boats, like destroyers, it can go up to 4. Typically, event maps have some sort of gimmick going on. Sometimes you'll have to deal with extra enemies on the map that chase you down with turn-based movement cycles, or other times you have a little mini-game at the end once you finish a run, where you need to surround an enemy boat to capture it, or destroy as many boats as possible, stuff like that. Or you can have the Kizuna Eye collab where there were environmental hazards and movement gates that you need to deal with. And remember Eye photobombing your screen whenever the alert went off? And to wrap up the gameplay stuff, let's go back to the SOS battles, or the submarine fights as I just like to call them. Submarine battles are kind of like event battles where there is no ambush mechanic, thank God, but every fight you get into now throws enemy submarines at you. Submarines cannot be attacked normally, just like your own, and they're invisible to your surface boats. Sonar gear allows you to see enemy subs, and depth charge projectors allow you to actually start attacking them, meaning that you need both of these to start killing enemy subs. The generic enemy subs that show up in non-boss fights in these SOS battles aren't really that threatening in my experience, and you don't even need to kill them in order to win those fights. You just need to make sure that your boss fleet for the SOS fights have a front line equipped with ASW gear, and you should be good to go. Note that the sub fights act like a secondary 4th node for whatever chapter that they appear in. What I mean by this is that if the chapter where the sub-fight shows up in has a 4th node that features a gold boat drop, the sub-fight can also drop you the same gold boat when you go fight the boss fleet there. Again, SOS battles are there for you to farm submarine gear, and so whenever you have the ability to do them, definitely try getting them done. From what I understand, while submarines aren't as impactful as your actual surface fleet boats, having a strong submarine squadron with good gear can be very helpful, particularly in some of the later story chapters where your surface fleets can really appreciate having the enemy fleets get softened up a bit before they go in or while they're fighting them. So that should cover most of the UI and basic gameplay mechanic stuff in the game. Me being the filthy casual that I am, there's probably a few things that I've missed or failed to cover, in which case hopefully you'll either figure them out on your own or someone else can help fill in whatever I didn't talk about. Or if you're really diligent, you'll even go look them up on your own, unlike all the FGO plebs who constantly want to get fucking spoon-fed. Now for the actual advice part of the video, which I'll try to keep concise, unlike what I did with all the UI explanation and game mechanic explanation bullshit. First off, decide on which boats you want to designate as your core fleet, or your boss fleet, as I guess most others would call it. These are the boats you can rely on to get you through any of the tougher content you might find yourself running into later on and take on bosses to finish out maps. So in order for them to be that core fleet, you need to level them first, give them gear, and enhance them. You should also form a farming fleet, or a quote-unquote clearing fleet, as some others would like to call it, to complement your boss fleet. This is the fleet that handles the trash fleets and clears the way to the boss so that your boss fleet can just go straight in and fight the boss fleet at full power. This means, naturally, that you'll have to farm a lot with your fleets. In Azur Lane, you can't really speed level your units. For example, in Bad Civ game, you can shove hella embers into your servants to get them to max level, and in Grill's Front Yard, you can stuff your guns with floppy disks. You can't really do that here in boats. There is a commission that gives you a lot of XP for up to 6 boats at a time, but it does cost you a lot of oil to run, and you need at least one boat who meets the minimum level requirement to run on it, and it takes anywhere from 8 to 10 hours to finish depending on its tiers, so it's very slow in comparison. Your main dorm also gives you passive XP like we mentioned earlier, but not too much at a time, and so again, it's time intensive. This means that if you want to power level your boats, you gotta do it the old-fashioned way and start grinding. There are two ways to boost XP gain for your boats: morale and combat. Morale is the fatigue mechanic in this game, and there are 4 stages of it going from 0 to 150. If your boats are in the max morale threshold, which is indicated by a sparkling green happy face, they receive 20% bonus XP for all their fights until they lose enough morale from fighting long enough. They also lose 2 morale every time they enter a fight, including ambushes, another reason why they're so fucking annoying, and they lose 10 morale if they sink. It's the only penalty you suffer for having your boat sink, but if you're trying to grind for a long time and you need their morale to last for as long as possible, that's a chunk of morale gone just like that. Boats studying in your lecture hall also slowly lose morale as long as they're in there, but you don't need to worry about that because in order for your boats to hit max morale, they need to be in your dorm first, and you can't have a boat be in both your dorm and your lecture hall at the same time. The default max morale cap is 119, which is 1 off the minimum value to be in max morale, so by sticking your boats in dorm, this improves their morale regeneration rate and increases their morale cap up to 150 for that extra 20% XP gain. TLDR, if you have boats that you want to power level or use to grind out nodes with, it's a good idea to dorm them so that they can reach max morale and stay in max morale for much longer than they otherwise would for as much extra XP gain as possible. The other XP boost is through combat. In every fleet that you deploy, you have a flagship, which is always a backline boat in the center. The flagship always receives 50% extra bonus XP just for being flagship, which is great if you have a backline boat that you want to level up quickly. And whoever gets MVP for a battle, which is determined by how much damage a boat does total for that battle, receives double XP. Incidentally, both the flagship and MVP bonuses can stack, which means that you can level up backline boats very fast, potentially. The difficulties of the enemy fleets that spawn in on a map affects your XP gain too. A small fleet gives no bonus, but a medium fleet gives 10% more XP for the fleet that beats it, and a large fleet gives 20% extra. The boss fleet gives 46.4% more XP apparently, which is an oddly specific amount, so just think of it as a little less than a 50% bonus XP for your fleet. And finally, getting only an A rank on a fight reduces your fleet's XP gain with a 0.83 times modifier. There are 3 requirements for an S rank in any fight: kill all enemies, take no casualties, and finish the fight in a set amount of time, which is usually 2 minutes but can be different for certain event nodes. So therefore, S ranks are essential not just for consistent XP gain, but also for other things like increased chances to get a limited boat drop from a boss fleet, so try not to fail them. It'll take you some time to get your boats to max level, but as long as you consistently grind and make sure to optimize XP gain, you'll get there a lot faster and make it a lot easier on yourself and your oil. Oh, and speaking of oil, now's a good time to talk about that. We mentioned at the beginning that oil is your primary resource to fuel your fleets and grind. If you're the type of player who doesn't really grind all that often and you treat the game more as a waifu simulator, you don't really need to worry about saving oil and can just splurge on full 6 boat fleets whenever you play. But since the title of this video is about min-maxing your account, grinding for as long as possible means that you need to find ways to optimize use of your oil to make it last as long as possible. There are a few ways to do so. There should be plenty of guides out there on YouTube and in other places that go into more detail about this, but the general tips are to avoid limit breaking your boats too early, since limit breaking them increases their oil consumption, and to use cheap boats that use oil at smaller rates. Ideally for grinding, you should only have to use 2 boat fleets, one Vanguard and one backline, since using full fleets is very expensive and can chew through your oil supply faster than the gacha can eat all your cubes. Just kidding, it's the other way around, isn't it? Point is though, only use full fleets if you need to take down a tough boss fleet or node in general, or if you have way more oil than you know what to do with. Speaking of having too much oil, if you need to get rid of some right away because you either don't have the time to grind it off or you're just lazy and you don't want to, you can just go to Dorm and buy Naval Curry. It's an easy way to dump your oil, and you get to stock up your Dorm with Curry, which also gives a small XP boost for your dormed boats. Keep up with your commissions as well. Being diligent with them by constantly resetting them as soon as they finish will supply you with a steady flow of supplies, some of which includes oil. And make sure to prioritize upgrading your merchant and canteen for the increased stockpile cap and resource generation. Speaking of which, in order to upgrade your merchant and canteen, you need to level up your main commander level, which you can do by grinding. What a surprise. Rush to at least commander level 70 if you can. This will also unlock the best daily raid tiers that give you the most coin and best drops. It'll take a while, but the faster you can reach it, the faster you'll be able to gather more good drops. If my memory from way back when I started the game serves me correctly still, and they haven't changed this, the game should give you missions that give you some gems to work with. If the game still does this, use those gems to unlock the extra slots in the dorm first and foremost. And even if you're not a fan of doing virtual interior decoration, try to decorate your dorm with stuff because it'll increase the comfort level of the dorm for your boats, which is important in increasing the passive XP gain that they get for being dormed. You don't have to go overboard with it, though one thing I've noticed is that because I grind commissions so often and they constantly give dorm coins, I end up with way more coins than I know what to do with, and I've never had to pay for any dorm furniture or presets as a result with gems. So you could go overboard and splurge your dorm coins eventually once you get enough of it, because it's not like you can really use them anywhere else anyway, so might as well. Lastly, don't worry about your lecture hall. It unlocks at commander level 50, but because you can only stock up XP there with the XP earned by boats that are at least level 100, there's not much of a point to upgrade it or even use it at all before you have any level 100 boats. And even then, you don't need to worry about upgrading the lecture hall itself until you have enough level 100 boats and you know you'll be using those boats a lot for grinding. So leave upgrading it for later if you even want to at all. As for the relative difficulty of Azur Lane, you can get away with using whatever boats you like for early game and mid game. Though from talking with friends who grind this game a lot, it appears that this game's difficulty can be represented in checkpoints, or I guess a staircase diagram, whichever you prefer. The first checkpoint is World 3, where you start having to deal with suicide boats, which are the annoying kamikaze boats that are super fast, do a ton of damage on impact, and go straight for your backline. And if you're not ready for them, they can be a real pain in the ass to deal with. But once you start fielding BBs with secondary guns, they become much easier to manage. The second checkpoint is, at least in my experience, World 9. Up until then, let's say for like the first 7 or 8 chapters or so, like I said, you have pretty much full freedom to use literally whoever you want, because the game is manageable enough where all you need to do is have sufficiently leveled and enhanced boats, and they can handle themselves just fine. But at some point, the story chapters become tough enough to the point where you have to start paying attention to which boats you're using and what kind of gear they got. You can't just get away with throwing waifu fleets at shit and expect them to win everything, contrary to what you might have been hoping with this game. Depending on the strength of your account, how hard you grind, and how much you focus on boat and gear management and enhancement, and how fast you go through those story chapters, you might hit this point sooner or later than others. A good way to pace yourself so that you don't end up venturing too far into story chapters and reach a point where you can clearly tell that you're not strong enough for that chapter yet is to grind out limited boats. These are boats who are limited to a specific node, and the first ones are the Foxes, Akagi and Kaga, whom you can farm for in 3-4. Because limited boats like them are very hard to obtain simply because of how rare they're supposed to be, chances are if you grind for them, you'll take a while before you can get them, which means that you'll spend a lot of time grinding out your boats so that by the time you do finish, your boats are hopefully pretty beefy and are more than sufficiently leveled to progress onto the next chapter. Not only that, but typically these map limited boats are worth your time and oil grinding for in the first place, and for those of you collector EX boys out there, you'll be grinding for these boats anyway, one way or another, so might as well start from the beginning. In case you get lucky and end up grabbing these limited drop boats fast, you can instead farm nodes that have good equipment blueprint drops, like 3-2 that lets you farm blueprints for the best dive bomber in the game, the purple SB2C Helldivers. Once you do reach the point in the game where you have to start paying attention to your fleet compositions and their gear, it's time to start tier whoring. Yay! As if y'all don't do that already, right? You didn't need me to fucking tell you that. Fortunately, tier whoring gear is, in my opinion anyway, more important than tier whoring the boats themselves, because having the right gear that's also adequately enhanced contributes heavily to the overall performance of your boats. Oftentimes, like I think I mentioned earlier, the difference between you being able to clear a node or not hinges on your gear selection and enhancement levels, and not necessarily because of the boats themselves. So try to always get the gear you use a lot to at least +3, since the silver plates are very easy to farm for, and typically you'll have a lot of it anyway at some point, on top of being very cheap to do so. Once you have a steady blue plate income, you should get your gear up to +6, and you should see a noticeable difference in performance from your boats afterwards. So for those of you who like using waifu fleets, this should be good news since you get to farm with them a little bit longer. Though to be fair, if you run waifu fleets, chances are you're already trying to give them the best possible gear anyway. But eventually you may feel compelled to use the top tiers. Unfortunately, a lot of the top tiers in this game are event limited, meaning that if you miss their events, you can't roll for them unless they get put into permanent gacha, so the most you can do is hope that they rerun stuff, which they've already started doing with the V-Deer rerun a few months ago. There will be tier lists for both equipment and boats in the description of this video, so check them out if you're prepared to embrace your dirty meta side like I have, especially the equipment tier list, so you know what gear is the best to give to your main fleets. But in the meantime, I'll list off a few boats that I think are worth mentioning. Sleepy, Drunk Lolly, Nemu, and Boat Lancer are all very good. Initially for the tutorial, the game only lets you pick one out of those three, but you can farm for all three once you start grinding out maps that feature them as drops, which thankfully you can do relatively early on. And not only can you retrofit them all and make them even stronger, but one of the collection tasks gives you Torp Queen, aka the 4th starter as she's more well known as, after you collect and max limit break all three of the initial starters. And you can also retrofit Ayaya and turn her into the best damn torpor in the game. Small E is great for her evasion buff for the whole front line, along with her barrage, which is the best looking barrage in the game in my opinion, but since she's mirror only, you'll have to grind out PvPs to get her, which may take a while, especially if you're just starting off. Cleave Bro and Helena are also great. In fact, Helena is considered top tier even. Cleave Bro's got good DPS, anti-air, and a skill that buffs your entire fleet's damage output, and her victory animation is a meme, which is a good thing. Helena also has great DPS and has the inverse of Cleave Bro's skill, where instead of buffing the fleet, she debuffs the entire enemy fleet currently on the screen at the time that she uses her skill by forcing them to take extra damage. Monty Python is also another great DPS who buffs other cruisers and is voiced by Best Kohai. Phoenix is one of the best budget farming cruisers with good DPS, low rarity, which means she's relatively easy to obtain and limit break, and a self-heal when she hits low health. Cowbell is a tanky cruiser with good DPS and a smokescreen that gives an evasion buff to your front line so long as they're inside it. And Sandy, well, if you love dank weeb memes, here's your resident memer right here. She also turns into one of the best cruisers in the game post-retro once we get it, so maybe it's not such a bad idea to invest in this meme. She is indeed number one, never forget. Portland, despite seeming like an airheaded syscon who faps to indie dojins all day, is one of the best cruisers post-retro thanks to her DPS and defense buff. Wichita also gets the Ayanami treatment, a great heavy cruiser DPS and buffer whom you can get only after completing the collection requirement for her. Atago, Takao, and Prince are also honorable mentions, the Pixiv Queens being torpedo heavies with good DPS, and Pudding being a thick and tanky heavy for good survivability. The battleships you want to invest in are ones that have strong barrages, so ones like British Media and the Edgy Twins. Magic School Bus and Boat Fran are great early game monitors, which are kind of like weaker battleships because they have really strong barrages, but they fall off later on because they have low HP for backliners. Hood is great because her barrage covers a wide area, comes out fast when she fires it, and does a ton of damage, and she also gives your whole backline increased reload speed for faster follow-up volleys. Warspit is a bit of a long-term investment. She eventually gets a retrofit that puts her in top tier, but currently NA Boats doesn't have her retro yet. She's still a decent BB as is, and she's permanent, so use her if she shows up. Lusty, Uni, Sarah, Shoho, and Enti are all fantastic carriers. Lusty protects your front line with a shield that absorbs damage based on a percentage of her own max HP. Uni both heals your front line every time she launches an airstrike and gives them a passive reload speed buff. Sarah becomes an absolute unit of a DPS carrier post-retro, and even has an artillery skill that seems to go off like every other second for some additional firepower. Shoho is kinda like Uni, where she also heals your front line but also buffs her fellow carriers, and Enti is just one of the best DPS carriers in the game with great survivability thanks to her first skill. Well, it's actually her only skill, but you get the point. Now onto some more general advice. Use your first 80 medals to grab either Hood or Enti from the SSR exchange. Since the gold boat on medal exchange is limited to just the gacha permanent gold boats, Hood and Enti are easily the best ones on rotation. This also means that you don't have to worry about trying to spam special construction or whatever for either of them unless you're just impatient and want them right away. Don't exchange for Belfast because you're either eventually going to get her through light construction or event construction, whichever comes first. While it's ultimately up to you on who you want to spend your first 20k merit on first, the safer option in my opinion is to go with SDK because she's a strong BB with great anti-air, and she's even better if you take into account the fact that there's not a whole lot of great BBs available who aren't event limited, especially gold ones. You can easily farm for a ton of good destroyers early on, and in fact you start the game with one of the better ones too, so getting small E, in my opinion, should come after you get SDK. Just remember that sometimes the merit shop refresh causes either SDK or a small E to get rotated out. You just need to wait another day or two before they come back, so don't panic if they're not there when you finally have enough merit to buy them. Speaking of merit, always do your PvPs. Probably repeating myself from earlier here, but even if you just start out and get a list full of people who have fleets that can shit all over yours, do your PvP fights anyway. While you do only get half the merit for losing exercises as opposed to winning them, you always want to have merit income so that you can always make progress towards the merit boats and eventually more gold bullets. Or you can be that guy and keep reset scumming exercises until you win with good RNG. Always have boats in tag training. Like I alluded to earlier, leveling skills is a long process, just like normal leveling, so the sooner you can get started on it, the better. Because of this, always be on the lookout for T2 and eventually T3 books to use for skill leveling. Try to always check out the munitions shop whenever it refreshes to see what it has. Your top purchase priorities should be T3 textbooks and wisdom cubes, though the cubes are a bit rare to find, followed by dorm food and plates in case you need extra. You can also check the items tab in Metal Exchange to see if they have books for sale there, but mainly you want to save medals for either the SSR exchange if you want to, or for the gold bullets that they have in Ship Exchange every once in a while. One last thing about the books, because of how skill types are distributed throughout the game, you'll find yourself using a lot of offensive books first, or the red books, because a ton of boats have offensive skills, and a lot of those boats have multiple skills each. This is followed by the support books, or the yellow ones, and then the defensive books last, or the blue ones. You may have to use all three types more or less evenly in the beginning, but eventually you should get to the point where you'll find yourself needing more red books and yellow books instead of the blue ones. Be vigilant with your dailies and weeklies. Do all your dailies every day, and doing those will also complete the weeklies eventually along the way. Do all the daily raids, hard mode runs, and PvP matches too, because if you don't do those are potential drops, coin, supplies, and merit that you're just flushing down the drain, kind of like if you go to college and then start skipping class. Make sure to eventually complete your training too, the tab at the top center that we discussed earlier, and always try to have commissions constantly going if you can, and together you can build up a steady revenue of supplies that you can build up to use on big events that need a lot of farming and feature a lot of limited boats for you to pull from gacha. If there's a node you want to farm, always 3-star it so that you can decrease the threat level on it and make it easier on yourself to farm it. Again, ideally you want to use 2 boat fleets or as few boats to grind that node as possible to save on oil, but it's fine if you use full fleets for the purpose of 3-starring a node. But once you do that, start busting out the oil savers and strats so that you can farm that node for as long as you can. Be diligent with your mail. You'll receive free oil and coin from the devs for maintenances, special occasions, and whatnot, but sometimes redeeming them right away isn't what you want to do, especially if you're close to being capped on one resource or another. Instead, because your mail, again, technically doesn't have an expiration date, the stuff they have just kind of sits there forever until you redeem them. So kind of like an FGO, treat it as a storage box. You should still redeem the merit right away though, since you're only ever going to use it for one shop in the entire game. When you're in battle, remember that you can reposition your boats before they enter combat with another enemy fleet. Your flagship is the boat that takes the most damage in the backline, so in case you're wondering why your flagship always ends up with a lot less HP than the others, that's why. So when your flagship is about to die, you can switch her spot with another backliner in her fleet so that if she dies, you don't instantly lose the fight because your flagship died. The same concept applies to your front line. The leftmost boat typically takes the most damage since she's leading the vanguard, and the center takes the least damage, though you can definitely end up in situations where your center or your back boats got damaged the most in a fight. And daily reminder to use double formation for the vast majority of your fights. For nodes that you farm a lot, in addition to clearing it and making the threat levels safe, try to memorize enemy spawns and learn to work with the map geography for positioning and spawn blocking. Some maps like 3-4 always spawn the boss fleet in the lower right corner, but sometimes an enemy fleet will spawn in front of them or next to them and blocks access to them, forcing you to fight another battle just to reach the boss fleet. To prevent this, send in a second fleet prematurely to a tile that'll ensure that you don't get blocked out from reaching the boss fleet. Enemy fleets don't spawn on the same tiles as the ones your fleets are currently occupying, with the one exception being the flagship if it has a static spawn point and one of your fleets is on it when the boss fleet spawns in. And S-ranking a boss fight in any node guarantees you a ship drop, which ensures that you always have a shot at getting a node limited boat to drop with every run, so do your best to guarantee S-ranks every time. And this is advice for later on in the game, but enemy battleships starting in World 10 become super dangerous because more or less all of them start firing incendiary rounds at your backline, mainly at your flagship, and on top of doing lots of initial damage, they can set your backliners on fire, and the burn damage is fucking insane. So because of that, invest in good carriers early on, and train yourself to play on manual and learn to use airstrikes as screen clearers. This is the best defensive countermeasure against late game battleships, since airstrikes just delete incendiary shots entirely too. Don't have to worry about them if you can just erase them from existence, right? Also, make sure to either farm for blue fire extinguishers or open tech boxes for them, since they dramatically decrease the burn damage your boats take if they do get lit on fire. Not that most of them need to be lit on fire when they're smoking hot already. Sorry, that's the degenerate weeb in me talking. And perhaps most importantly, make sure to start the Akashi quest as soon as possible. And by that, I mean start it as soon as you're done with the fucking tutorial, or whenever's the soonest possible time that a new player can begin the quest. The Akashi quest is notoriously long to complete. You're looking at least 2 weeks or more to get it done because of how tedious some of the steps are. But if you complete it, you get Scamcat, who is a great repair boat who comes with her own special equipment because you get it while doing her quest. And best of all, she's free. Can't say no to a free SSR, right? And ironically enough, it's Akashi. Lastly, Azure Lane is very free to play friendly, minus the whole event rush that we had a month or two ago. That was kinda rough, but besides that, the game's got a 7% SSR rate with a 2.5% SSR rate up. And if you come from other games that I need not mention, because chances are you play those too, or at least used to, these are some insanely good rates, so you absolutely do not have to spend anything on this game to be able to build up a strong account. That being said, you can still get fucked by the gacha, even in this game. So just because this game's got some real good rates compared to some other games, doesn't make you immune from getting bent over. Scamcat wants her damn paycheck, you know, and Yostar sure as fuck ain't paying for it. But sometimes the game will give you free gems once in a while, either through missions or with Apollo gems. As a free-to-play, once you have all dorm boat slots unlocked, your next biggest concern will be dock space, because it's generally pretty easy to get lots of boats. With events throwing you tons of new boats at once, you'll find yourself running out of dock space real fast. You can get away with not expanding equipment space since you can just rotate your best sets of gear around to whichever boats need them the most and just disassemble the rest, but dock space expansion is critical because not only are you getting new boats frequently, but you also need space to keep extra copies of boats that you want to limit break eventually, or extra copies of bullets. Regular bullets aren't that big of a deal, but gold bullets, especially early on, are pretty tough to come by, especially given how easily you get SSRs in this game, so you want to keep extra SSR copies whenever you don't have enough gold bullets. That, and if you hit your dock space cap, the game forces you to get rid of some of the boats to make space for the new ones coming in. If you're farming and this happens, the game tells you to either retire or enhance another boat first before continuing your farming. You cannot farm again until you free up some space. Same thing with construction. If your space is full, the game won't let you activate completed build orders until you've made some room. Unlike what Twitter might tell you, you don't really need skins, those are just cosmetics, though admittedly most of them are very well done. You don't need rings either, the game gives you one for free as soon as you get any one boat to 100 affection for you to marry any one boat of your choice. You don't need anything else but dorm slots and dock space, that's pretty much it. Alright, time for the part of the video that the free-to-plays hate the absolute most. Advice for whales who want to go hard on this game. There's actually not really too much to talk about here, surprisingly enough, because what Azur Lane offers that a lot of other gacha games don't is the ability to buy stuff like skins and item packs directly without having to deal with any gacha RNG. I'm looking at you, girls frontline. Because of this, whaling in this game is much more rewarding than in other gacha games that do not do this. Again, this is assuming that you don't just set all of your gems on fire for the gacha, but thankfully as long as you're consistently doing your commissions and doing your dailies and weeklies, you should be self-sufficient on cubes, coin, and quick finishers. I myself have only ever had to buy coin occasionally with gems, and I've never had to buy cubes or quick finishers with gems. Rather, what you'll probably end up spending the most gems on is oil if you plan on farming like a degenerate in this game. So here's what you'll want to know in regards to this. You can buy more oil directly from the oil tab at the main menu. Each time you buy, you get around 800 oil or so, but the catch is that the more times you buy oil like this, the more expensive each oil purchase becomes. It starts out at just 50 gems per buy, then doubles to 100 gems after 2 purchases, then doubles to 200 gems again after 4 purchases, then to 400, and then eventually the game just outright cuts you off from buying more oil. I made the mistake of getting to this point back in the day when I was grinding for Monarch, and so I think you can buy oil manually like this up to like 15 times or so, or something like that, before Yostar says, "Fuck you, stop farming already." So if you're farming a lot and need more oil, buy oil manually just twice a day, because that means you're getting the best deal out of it. 100 gems is getting you almost 1600 oil or something, which is a great deal, especially when you consider how expensive it can get if you were to keep buying. Make sure to buy the trade license as soon as you start the game. Remember, it's only $8 for 500 gems immediately and a month's worth of oil, coin, and cubes. Per day, obviously it's not much, like I said before, it's just 200 oil, 1000 coin, and 1 cube per day, but if you let it accumulate in your inbox, after a full month, you have 6,000 oil, 30,000 coin, and 30 cubes that you can redeem instantly, so the trade license can act as your emergency farming and or gacha supplies for when your normal stockpiles start to run low. And lastly, remember to buy the oil packs that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. It's 120 gems per 2,000 oil pack if it's available, so you're paying 600 gems for 10,000 oil total, which is perfect for heavy-duty event farming. Just be careful with constantly running full fleets, since they can still run through your oil supply if you farm with them for long enough. Other than oil, if you're into buying lots of costumes or skins for your boats, every so often the game will put up a costume lucky bag for sale that gives you a chance to obtain a random skin out of a preset group. Typically these will show up during special events where the game releases a lot of skins at once, so the lucky bags are a way for players to grab the skin that they want with a few other goodies. And because the lucky bags also come with more gems, players can directly buy the skin that they were looking for in case they end up not getting what they want. The game also occasionally puts out ring packs where you can get a bundle of 2 rings at a discount, so in case you're looking to marry multiple boats because you're trying to pretend to have a weeb harem of your own, I'd suggest waiting for these packs to show up. You can also buy the other packs in the pack section if you want, though just keep in mind that the most important ones, in my opinions, are the ones that I obviously mentioned. Occasionally the shop will have textbooks for gem purchase, and frequently they'll be T3 books. I'd recommend buying them if you don't mind the extra gem costs because of how tedious and book intensive skill leveling is in this game, so any T3 book that you can come across, especially the red and yellow books, you should pick up whenever possible. The daily that gives you textbooks can really only supply you with so much, so supplementing your income of books with shop purchases is very helpful in my opinion. Speaking of textbooks actually, make sure to buy the 3rd skill training slot in the academy. If you're serious about trying to speed level your boats, getting their skill levels up to par is also very important, and having that extra 3rd slot goes a long way in helping you get more better level boats faster. The biggest advantage that I'd say whaling gives you in boats, other than being able to farm a lot longer than normal, and of course flexing all the costumes and married boats you have, is for PR. Typically the best research projects in terms of yielding PR blueprints costs cubes and a lot of coin to do so, and doing too many of these as a free-to-play will definitely bankrupt you real fast. But if you're a whale and you're okay with dumping gems for cubes and coin, you can spam all the top tier research projects so that you can level up your PR boats fast. Oh, and of course, not to mention, as a whale, since you're obviously able to farm a lot longer, you'll be able to get your PR boats a lot more quickly than the others in the first place, too. And I think that's about it. Chances are, because there's so much that I've talked about though, I'm probably forgetting about something that I wanted to mention, but I think this should cover most stuff. Keep in mind though that this game is updated very frequently, so no doubt there will be new content added that this video just can't cover obviously, but I should have covered at least the basics and the most important stuff that you'll need to know going into this game. There's also a good chance that I've made a mistake with some of the stuff I've discussed, so again, I'd like to reiterate that as a filthy casual, mistakes may be inevitable. Just do me a favor and conveniently ignore the fact that I only have Ibuki left out of the first PR batch. As always, feel free to leave your own advice for new players in the comment section below. It's there for a reason after all, and I know most people tend to scroll down to the comment section anyway while watching a video or after finishing it. And of course, do check out whatever other resources and materials that you can get your hands on that can help you out with some of the finer details about this game. I'm sure y'all also know other proper Azur Lane YouTubers that y'all can learn from. But anyways, that's all from me. Thanks for watching this fucking hour and a half long video, or however the fuck long it was. And until next time, deuces.